Pay attention, because what you're about to hear here could completely change the way you view your spiritual life. The Bible shows us that Satan doesn't act in obvious ways. He doesn't appear with horns and a pitchfork. He's subtle, hiding in simple, common things that seem harmless. And that's exactly why so many people fall without even realizing it. Today I'm going to reveal something that may have been holding you back spiritually for years, and you may never have realized it. There's a powerful warning. There are 3 foods the enemy uses as traps to weaken your faith, block your prayers, and even delay your blessings. It may seem like an exaggeration, but it's not. If you've ever wondered why your spiritual life isn't progressing, why you feel like something is holding you back, even when seeking God, the answer may be right under your nose, in what you consume without thinking twice. And here, I'm not just talking about physical food, but something much deeper, something that affects the mind, body, and soul. Satan knows that if he can trap you in these details, he will keep you from achieving God's purpose for you. So stay with me until the end, because I'm going to expose this secret once and for all. You'll understand what these 3 foods are, how they're being used against you, and most importantly, how to free yourself from this spiritual prison. What you're about to hear today will open your eyes and could be the key to unlocking your life with God in a way you've never experienced before. What you've just discovered here has the power to radically transform your spiritual life, because now you know exactly where the enemy is trying to trap you and have the keys to freedom. This revelation opens a path of victory and clarity that many people still don't know. And since this truth has reached you and brought light, share your strength with others by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. This simple gesture allows more people to receive the same liberation you are experiencing now. Write the word in the comments "freed" as a sign that you have taken ownership of this transformation. Understand one thing: everything you consume in your daily life goes far beyond feeding your body. There's a spiritual dimension behind the simple act of eating, and that's precisely where the danger lies. The Bible has always made it clear that Satan doesn't appear blatantly. He's cunning, using what seems harmless to create loopholes and imprison lives. And when I talk about spiritual traps, I'm not talking about something distant or mysterious. I'm talking about things that are in your routine, on your table, inside your home. This is the first big warning. You need to understand that even what seems simple can be weakening your faith, preventing you from growing spiritually and robbing God of His presence in your life. Have you ever stopped to think about why you so often feel spiritually stagnant, even when praying, going to church, and striving to do what's right? Often the answer lies not in what you visibly do wrong, but in what you allow to creep in without question, in what you consider too normal to pay attention to. This is exactly where Satan comes in. He won't knock on your door and announce, "I'm here to destroy your spiritual life." No. He'll use what you're already accustomed to, what's part of your daily life, without arousing suspicion. That's his subtlety. That's why the warning I'm bringing here isn't just another pretty word, but a serious warning. There are 3 foods that have been used as instruments of imprisonment. Foods that seem harmless but carry symbolism and spiritual consequences that may be working against you without you realizing it. And the big problem is that most people ignore this. They laugh, underestimate, or even criticize those who talk about it, thinking it's just an exaggeration. But the reality is harsh. It's precisely in what you don't take seriously that the enemy finds room to act. It's like someone leaving a small crack in the wall of a house. You might think it's okay, after all, it's just a fissure, but that's where the infiltration begins. That's where the structure weakens. And by the time you realize it, the damage is already too great. Satan uses the same method. Small accesses, small concessions, small distractions. At first you don't even notice, but over time your prayer loses strength, your mind becomes scattered, your faith seems weak, and even the dreams God planted in you seem distant. Have you ever felt this way? As if you were fighting, but something invisible was blocking your progress? Well, that something is often directly linked to what you feed yourself, and I'm not just talking about physical food, but also practices and habits that infiltrate you almost imperceptibly. Now stop for a moment and reflect. How many times have you wondered why your spiritual life isn't taking off? How many times have you thought everything was fine, but inside you felt empty? This emptiness may be directly linked to what you're ingesting without question, to what has become routine, and you no longer even notice. It's not about a common diet. It's about spiritual poisoning disguised as normality. And this is where the lesson we need to understand comes in. Spiritual life is built both by what you consciously seek and by what you unconsciously allow. The enemy knows that if he can trap you in something simple, he has enough room to paralyze your faith. I know this conversation may seem heavy, but it's necessary, because the worst mistake you can make is underestimating the enemy. When you ignore these signs, you give him ground without realizing it. It's like handing the key to the front door of your house into the hands of someone who wants to destroy you. And that's exactly why this warning needs to be taken seriously. It's no coincidence that so many people watching right now are facing a silent spiritual struggle, feeling as if something is blocking their prayers and holding back their victories. Perhaps this is the explanation you've been searching for all along. And here's an important point. When the Bible tells us stories of people who fell into temptation, it almost always wasn't something immediately big, but rather small concessions, an overlooked detail, a habit fostered, a poor choice. These small loopholes turned into enormous chains. And the same thing happens today. Satan doesn't need a wide-open door. A crack is enough. A distraction is enough. You just need to believe that it's okay. That's how he works. And that's what makes this topic so urgent, because it may be the very explanation for the burden you've been carrying in your spiritual life. So I want you to do something right now. Write the word in the comments alert. This word will signal that you understand the seriousness of what is being revealed here, and that you are willing to open your spiritual eyes, so as not to fall into the same traps that so many people fall into. This act of commenting is not just engagement, it is a commitment to yourself to be vigilant. Write alert, and declare that from today on, you will no longer be deceived by the subtleties of the enemy. And understand, this isn't a conversation meant to scare you but to open your eyes, because only those who are awake can protect themselves. Only those who know the enemy's strategies can strengthen themselves in the presence of God. And now you know that you can no longer ignore what's entering your life, even the seemingly small things. The next step is to understand exactly how Satan uses these foods to create these spiritual prisons, and why they are so effective as instruments of imprisonment. What I'm going to reveal next will make you see in a way you may never have before. Understand one fundamental thing. The habits you maintain daily weigh heavily on your spiritual life. Often, it's not a major, visible sin that brings someone down, but the small, repeated habits, those that seem harmless and accumulate day after day, until they create a barrier between you and God. It's like when you start carrying a backpack and put a small stone inside. It seems like nothing. The next day you put another one in, then another. At first you don't even notice, but over time, that backpack becomes so heavy that you can't take a step without effort. This is how unobserved habits work. They weigh on the soul, weaken your faith, and make the spiritual journey tiring. The problem is that Satan knows this all too well. He doesn't need to convince you to deny God all at once. He just needs to trap you in routines that seem normal. It's the kind of trap that works on autopilot. You repeat things without thinking, and precisely because of that, you don't realize the prison you're entering. These habits can be linked to the way you eat, the conversations you have, the content you consume, even the excuses you repeat daily to justify your lack of spiritual discipline. All of this, little by little, shapes your mindset, dries up your prayer life, and distances you from being sensitive to God's voice. Now think about it. How many times have you told yourself you'd change, be more determined, put your spiritual life first, only to find yourself falling back into the same old habits after just a few days? This cycle is proof of how habit can be a real prison. What starts small grows until it dominates your life. It's like an invisible chain. You don't even see it, but you feel trapped. And this is precisely why so many Christians live frustrated, knowing what they should do, but unable to move forward. The teachings that reveal this pattern make it clear that transformation only begins when you identify these practices and make the conscious decision to break the cycle. As long as you think they're just details, they will continue to drain your spiritual strength. When you understand that they're loopholes exploited by the enemy, you begin to treat them as they should be treated, not as harmless habits but as disguised attacks, and that's when real change begins. Now I want you to do one thing. Write the word in the comments. Habit. This will show that you are willing to be more vigilant, to open your eyes, and not let small habits steal the strength of your walk with God. This simple act of writing, habit it, is a step of awareness and commitment that will further reinforce this message within you. And here comes the most important point. These habits not only erode your faith, but they create a direct link to what the enemy uses to keep you trapped. There's a connection between what you feed within yourself and what Satan uses to weaken you. And in the next step, you'll see exactly how these practices connect with spiritual symbols that seem normal, but carry much greater weight than you might imagine. Have you ever stopped to consider how much spiritual value your body has? The Bible says it is the temple of the Holy Spirit, and when you understand this truth, you realize that you cannot treat your body as something separate from your life with God. Everything you put into it, everything you allow in, directly affects your spiritual communion. This is the point many people overlook. They think caring for the body is just a matter of physical health, but they fail to realize the direct connection with the spiritual world. The enemy knows that by contaminating the body, he automatically weakens your sensitivity to the Spirit. It's as if a curtain is drawn between you and God, and each wrong choice further reinforces this barrier. It's no coincidence that Jesus spoke of fasting, that the Bible speaks of discipline, and that so many men and women of faith carefully considered what entered their bodies. Because what you ingest isn't just matter, isn't just physical fuel, but also a sign of how you treat the temple God gave you. And Satan, cunning as he is, uses this to his advantage. He knows that if he can make you trivialize caring for your body, he gains easy access to your mind, and consequently, your spiritual life. A body that is mistreated, contaminated, or given over to addictions loses the strength to pray, loses the will to seek God, and becomes a burden to the soul. Perhaps you've experienced this in practice. Days when you overdid something, days when you gave in to a harmful habit, and soon after felt enormous difficulty connecting with God. It's not just physical fatigue, it's spiritual too, because the body and spirit are not separate, they walk hand in hand. When one weakens, the other feels it. And when you understand this, you begin to look at every choice you make with new eyes. It's not just about eating or drinking, it's about discerning what each decision represents spiritually. The most dangerous thing is that Satan turns this carelessness into routine. He makes it seem normal to live any way, consume anything, and ignore limits. And then, little by little, you lose the awareness that your body is an altar, treating the sacred as common. This is precisely his plan, to trivialize the holy. Because when you treat your body like something else, you also begin to treat your spiritual life like something else. Discipline is lost, sensitivity diminishes, and gaps multiply. And here's a hard truth. There's no point in praying for more of God's presence if, at the same time, you hand over the temple he gave you into the hands of the enemy. It's like praying for a house to be filled with light while you yourself break the lamps. God wants to dwell fully in your heart, but it's you who must care for the space he chose to inhabit. This is where many fail. They want God's fire, but they continue to feed their bodies with what extinguishes that fire. They want spiritual clarity, but they continue to allow the enemy to contaminate the foundation that sustains communion. Now, to make this even more real, I want you to reflect. How have you been treating the temple of God, your body? Have you been vigilant, or have you been letting anything in? This is a moment for sincerity, and to show that you understand the weight of this warning, write the word in the comments. Temple writing. This is a declaration that you no longer want to live in any way, but that you will honor the body God gave you as a sacred space. This simple act already begins to align your mind with this new awareness. And keep this in mind, caring for the body isn't vanity, it's not exaggeration, it's spiritual vigilance. Those who care for the temple can hear God's voice more clearly, resist temptation more firmly, and live with greater spiritual authority. And the big point is that this relationship between body and spirit is directly linked to the next point, because there's a pattern the enemy uses. He always offers immediate pleasure to steal long-term strength. And understanding this, exchange is what will open your eyes to what's really at stake. The enemy will always work with a simple logic, offering something pleasurable in the moment and then demanding a high price. This is how he operates. This is how he traps, and this is how he slowly destroys the spiritual life of those who don't realize the trap. Immediate pleasure seems harmless, even fair. After all, who doesn't like instant satisfaction? But behind this sweet taste lies a prison that slowly closes. And here lies the danger of the foods used as symbols of this strategy. They aren't just ordinary things. They represent precisely this unfair exchange. You receive a fleeting pleasure, but you surrender your spiritual strength, your discipline, and often the presence of God in your life. It's like when someone eats too much sugar. At the time it feels good, it gives energy, it brings a peak of pleasure. But shortly after, the crash comes, the body feels it, the health pays the price. Spiritually, it's the same thing. Satan offers something that seems good at the moment, even seems innocent, but soon after comes emptiness, heaviness, the feeling that something is wrong. How many times have you experienced this? That feeling that in the heat of the moment everything made sense, but later left with a huge void, a heavy guilt, and the certainty that it had distanced you from God. This is the effect of the enemy's immediate pleasure. He satisfies today, only to exact a heavy price tomorrow. And here lies the cruelest part of this strategy: repetition. Because immediate pleasure doesn't last, it passes quickly, and to feel it again, you need to repeat and repeat and repeat. Thus, the cycle of slavery is born. You don't realize it, but you're trapped in something you can no longer control. It's an addiction, a prison that drains your spiritual strength and makes you feel increasingly weak in the face of temptation. What was once a quick taste becomes a chain that prevents you from moving forward. And each time you give in, you reinforce this chain, as if the enemy were tightening another link, making the prison even stronger. This is why so many people live frustrated in their faith. They want to be firm, they want to grow spiritually, but they keep giving way to immediate pleasure. They continue to accept the unfair trade-off, a fleeting relief in exchange for a heavy and stagnant spiritual life. What God intended as a life of abundance, the enemy transforms into a routine of stagnation. And the truth is, you can't experience God's best when you're still trapped in these small doses of pleasure that don't last. Now think about it. How many times have you promised to change? How many times have you said this time would be different, but all it took was the first opportunity to fall back into the same cycle? This doesn't happen because you're weak, but because this is exactly the enemy's strategy, to addict you to small doses of pleasure so you don't have the strength to look beyond. He makes you believe you need that to feel good, when in reality every time you give in, you're losing something much bigger. And here's the point you need to remember: everything the enemy offers is always a cheap copy of what God has already prepared. The pleasure Satan places before you is temporary, limited, and empty. But the satisfaction that comes from God is lasting, complete, and brings true peace. While the enemy binds with chains, God frees with purpose. While the enemy offers quick relief, God offers permanent rest. The question is, who will you believe? The momentary pleasure or the eternal promise? And don't think this is something distant. It's happening right now as you listen to these words. The enemy continues to place these options of immediate pleasure before you, hoping you won't notice the trap. But now you're aware. Now you understand that there's a hidden price behind every choice. What seemed harmless, you now see as a clear strategy of imprisonment. And when you see this, you gain the authority to say no, to break the cycle, and to choose what will truly strengthen your spiritual life. To fix this in your heart, I want you to write the word in the comments CHOICE, because in the end, it all comes down to this: the choice to give up immediate pleasure to experience the fullness that God has already prepared. Comment CHOICE as an act of decision, as a sign that you are willing to exchange what passes quickly for what is eternal. This small gesture will be the mark of your commitment to this truth. And be sure of one thing: this awareness will change the way you approach each decision. Because now you know that the enemy works with bait, but you also know that God's reward is infinitely greater. But there's an even deeper detail to this strategy. Satan doesn't just offer you immediate pleasure. He also works to weaken your vigilance. And understanding how spiritual vigilance connects to this struggle is the next step that will open your eyes even further. Now we come to a crucial point. There's no point in being aware of everything the enemy does if you don't learn to remain vigilant and prayerful. This is where many fail. They recognize the problem, understand the trap, But in their daily lives they live distracted, leaving room for Satan to continue working. Jesus was clear when he said, "Watch and pray so that you will not enter into temptation." He didn't just say pray or just watch. He combined the two because he knew that without discipline and a constant connection with God, a person becomes an easy target, and the enemy doesn't miss an opportunity. Vigilance is like a protective wall, and prayer is the force that keeps that wall firm. When you let your guard down, the wall cracks and temptation rushes in. The big issue is that Satan knows your weaknesses. He knows exactly where you're most vulnerable and waits for the right moment to strike. Therefore, vigilance must be constant, like a guard at a gate. You can't relax thinking everything is fine because it's precisely when you let your guard down that the enemy finds space. And here's a detail few people understand. Vigilance isn't living in fear. It's living with awareness. It's knowing that every choice counts, every thought matters, every decision opens or closes a spiritual door. When you live in this state of alertness, you're not overcome by anxiety, but rather strengthened by the presence of God. And how do you maintain this state? This is where prayer comes in. Prayer is not an empty ritual, but your direct connection to the source of power that strengthens you. When you pray, you're not just talking, you're nourishing your spirit, filling your inner self with strength to endure. It's like charging your cell phone battery. Without a charge, it won't work. Likewise, without prayer, you even try to fight, but you fall because you lack the strength. Those who pray are more vigilant. Those who are vigilant fall less. This is the reality. But there's something even deeper. Victory comes not just from vigilance and prayer themselves, but from what they produce within you, spiritual discernment. And here we come to the final point. Discernment is the ability to see what's hidden, to realize when something seemingly harmless is actually a trap. How many times have you made a decision and later on realized something was wrong from the start? Discernment is that voice that warns before disaster strikes, and it is only developed when you live in prayer and vigilance. Without these practices, you become blind to the enemy's strategies. The enemy uses subtlety because he knows that those who lack discernment will fall. But when you live connected to God's word, when you nourish your spirit and care for the temple that is your body, you begin to see beyond the surface. You understand that not everything good is from God, that not everything beautiful is right, and that often what seems normal is precisely the trap set to lead you away from your purpose. This level of spiritual clarity is what separates those who constantly fall from those who walk firmly. What you received here opened your eyes to see where the enemy has been trying to trap you and showed you how to overcome these spiritual traps. This revelation has already begun to transform the way you see your own journey, and that's precisely why others need access to this same truth. Like and subscribe to the channel, because that way you become part of those who spread this light and help others free themselves too. Write the word in the comments, victory, to mark that this message has already generated change within you. And stay tuned, because in the next video I will reveal an even deeper secret, something that will expand on what you've learned today and can take your spiritual life to a level you've never experienced before.